All right, it's Jersey Jaguar back at you with a podcast, and today we have a very special guest, one that I'm very honored to meet to, one that I can't say enough how much it was worth the drive to come out here, and that's none other than the infamous Peter City Capolino. Peter, why don't you go ahead and take it away and give us a little introduction about yourself and where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. That's Teddy, my cat.
And we got my buddy Teddy right here, who's also worth the
Our
drive.
wife for the short hair.
Yeah.
So my name is Peter Capolino. I'm the founder of the Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company. And the Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company officially started in 1988. The original Mitchell and Ness began in 1904, and my father was an orphan from Formia, Italy, who Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Ness took in 1917, and he stayed there his whole life and bought the company in 1952. I was born in 1945, and between high school, college, and 3 years in the service, I've worked at Mitchell and Ness my entire life since I was 12 years old. My father passed away in 1978, and in 1988 I formed a separate corporation called the Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company, which is the company that most everyone knows.
And it's still in existence today.
Yes, Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company is in existence today. It's actually part of Fanatics.
It is.
It's interesting because Michael Rubin's other partial owners, one of which is Jay-Z
And LeBron James.
James, both of whom were good customers of mine in the early days.
So they were big fans enough that they wanted to have a part of it.
They wanted to have a part of it,
Sure.
and LeBron used to stop in even when he was a high schooler. They played some high school traveling team games at the Palestra here in Philadelphia, and LeBron would come in, hang out at the store.
And that was in the early 2000s.
Yes, it was 2003, 2004.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So Peter, you have done a couple podcasts already, and you gave a full explanation and a full history of yourself and of the company. So for the listeners today and the viewers who are watching this on YouTube, what we're going to do is a little bit different. Me and Peter are going to be talking on a personal level about jerseys, about some of his experiences outside of the history and some of the stuff that he would like to share. I think the best way to get that started is with how he said Peter City Capolino. So guys, we're going to be hearing some awesome stories from Peter, some of his great experiences. He's going to be giving some advice and a bunch of other stuff. So this is going to be a truly genuine, awesome podcast for everybody and a YouTube video. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and tell us how City came into the name?
Well, Sean Puffy Combs was a good customer of mine.
All right.
And a lot of the rappers would come around to the store, and also, even in 2001 and 2002, I sponsored some parties surrounding NBA All-Star games. But the guys would call me P. Chatty after Sean Puffy Combs because I like to talk a lot.
All right.
And then when Combs changed to P. Diddy, the rappers started calling me P. City. And then when Sean Combs had to shorten his name to Diddy, people don't know this, but he was sued by a musical group in London over the P. Diddy thing, right. And he just shortened his name to Diddy. So I'm kind of known throughout the rap world as City.
As City.
City, yes. So people, the entertainers don't know me as Peter Capolino. They just know me as
City.
Yeah, if you talk to Fabulous, he'll know me as City.
As City.
I'm City. Or Fat Joe, or any of the other guys.
So it wasn't if somebody wanted a jersey, go contact Peter Capolino. It's like, hey man, you need a jersey. You're going straight to City.
City, yes.
Excellent. All right, so Peter, so obviously a lot of these celebrities, both in the sports world and obviously now outside of the sports world that we're talking about, rappers really valued your jerseys and your work, and they saw them as good. Mm-hmm. So in your mind, what makes a good jersey?
Well, what makes a good jersey for me is its authenticity to the original.
Okay.
That's number one.
Detail specifics.
Yes. The specifics on this has to be, well, I make the original fabrics. If there's any patches that are on the jerseys, they have to be identical to the original.
Okay.
The number font, style of number has to be correct, as well as any names on the back. The colors have to be perfectly matched. And I also use the exact same kinds of trims, especially on the the baseball jerseys.
Braiding the satin trims,
The braiding.
everything. Yeah.
There's a form of braid called soutache.
Soutache is very
that
nice and
goes
shiny.
on, and
Yeah.
and all of that has to be perfect, because unless the jersey is a perfect representation of the original, it doesn't trigger a memory and it doesn't trigger a fondness.
Well, it's one of those things that, like, yes, it's very close, it's very nice, but it's still not exact. Right.
In baseball, I made all of my button front jerseys 5 buttons.
Okay.
The real jerseys were 7 buttons.
Correct.
And I did that because the counterfeiters were counterfeiting me and making their jerseys look like mine, so much so that they would fool unsuspecting and non-knowledgeable people. So lots of times they would make 5-button jerseys to duplicate what I was doing, but I would know immediately that that jersey was a replica, not a real one. This is in the world of baseball.
Sure. Now, speaking about counterfeit jerseys, how big of a battle was it to consistently go after these guys and stop them from doing what they do?
It was a total losing battle. I was spending upwards of $500,000 a year during the peak of the counterfeiting, and none of that put a dent in the counterfeiting coming in from Korea, China, Latin America. It was unbelievable. I will tell you one thing though about counterfeiting. I think it was 2003 or 2004. The federal government, who investigates counterfeiting, put like the top 5 counterfeited brands in the country, and my little brand was number 5.
Was 5?
5, you know,
out of all of them.
just below like Nike, Prada,
Versace, I'm guessing.
Versace, Louis Vuitton, Mitchell and Ness.
And then you had Mitchell and Ness.
And when I saw that, you know, my company back then was doing maybe $40 million a year. And here I am with multi-billion-dollar companies, and I'm being counterfeited, you know, as bad as those companies.
You know,
so in a way, it was a compliment.
Yeah, in a way, you know, it's, like in the fighting game, we say, you know, when you turn pro, hit that guy so hard that we hear you across the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So you did the same thing.
Yes.
Your jersey became so big that they heard it and they found it all the way across the other end of the world, and it made them counterfeit.
Yes.
All right, so that was one of the bigger setbacks about your game.
Mm-hmm.
What was one of the most rewarding and one of the things you missed the most, and one of the aspects that you really were fond of and that you would never have a problem going back to if you could?
Well, the first thing I miss is the reaction of the consumers who appreciated what I did, because I felt like my work was a piece of art, you know, albeit copying somebody's original work, but still a very close. And it was rewarding to me to see the positive reaction and the enjoyment and happiness that I brought people.
And it all started with a Ted Williams jersey.
It started with a Ted Williams jersey, was one of my first ones. Also a Bob Skinner Pittsburgh Pirate vest.
Okay.
When I remade them and people saw them, and it generated an emotion, and I thought, my God, these jerseys are really bringing emotions out in people.
Yeah.
I'm going to just keep doing this until I can't do it anymore.
This is an excellent contribution, not, you know, like to the jersey community, but to the sports community in general. Now, did you ever get that same reaction yourself when you remade a jersey? Like, I can't believe I'm remaking this player's jersey.
Well,
I always wanted one, and I finally
yeah,
got
I
it.
mean, for me, it was always the 1960 Philadelphia Eagles. So, you know, I made Tommy McDonald and Chuck Bednarik, Bobby Walston, Pete Retzlaff, Norm Van Brocklin, of course, but was brought back other memories because in 1960, my father was actually outfitting the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you go to the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, and you see any Eagles jerseys from 1960, I think Norm Van Brocklin's jersey is up there. There's a Mitchell and Ness label in the neck of that jersey.
And it's from your guys' company.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My dad did it.
So then obviously those jerseys like that you made later on again, you know, in higher numbers were dead spot on.
Yep.
And you did both the home and the away.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a preference over the home or the away?
Well, I like the home. I was at the 60 championship game. I was I was 15 years old in 10th grade at Franklin Field. Sitting in the upper deck. My dad gave the good seats away to everybody else. But I was at that game. It was December 26th, and so it it was a fond memory for me. Oh, another fond memory, and a guy that I liked was Joe Namath, and I made a lot of jerseys for Namath. But on January 12th, 1969, my birthday is actually January 12th, 1969. I was in a foxhole in the DMZ in Korea with a transistor radio, and I listened to the New York Jets beat the Baltimore Colts in that Super Bowl.
In that Super Bowl.
Yes, and I listened to it on a little radio up on the DMZ. Well, I forget what the military station was called then, Radio America or Stars and Stripes. And so it was interesting to me that when I made Namath's Super Bowl jersey, it brought back that memory.
Yeah, this is
a time in my life. Yes,
especially if you're stationed, overseas, during the Korean War.
Well, it wasn't the Korean War. The Korean War was in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
This was just when we had the DMZ. I was an Army officer in the Corps of Engineers, and we were building 50 caliber machine gun bunkers on the DMZ.
So you were building machine guns, and you also were building jerseys.
Yes. Well, I wasn't. Yeah. Now I'm building jerseys. Back then, we were building machine gun bunkers on the DMZ.
Yeah, sure. So if I remember correctly, Joe Namath said that he is going to win that Super Bowl.
Yes.
He was famous for that.
Yes. Oh, we have it. Cats are having a fight.
Speaking of station, we got the cat station. Guys, if you're able to catch that on the YouTube, I don't know if it's in the video, but Peter actually has 3 awesome cats, and they're British short hairs.
They're all British short hairs.
Yeah.
Teddy, Vigo, and Ramona.
Yep. One is all white with these awesome gold eyes. One is black, and the other is white and gray with a cute button gray nose. Okay. Excellent. Guys, I had to mention that being the Jersey Jaguar, we had to bring the cats into it, and these guys are awesome. All right, so Peter, being that the Philadelphia Eagles are your favorite sports team, period, regardless of sport, if you could bring back one style of theirs to see worn on the field currently, what would it be as a throwback game or a throwback season?
Well, the one I would love the most, obviously, is 1960, and it's a slightly darker Kelly green.
Versus the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s. I mean, I like the Randall Cunningham Kelly jersey, and that was a sort of a throwback to 60, but it wasn't quite 1960s shade of green. So that, but I made the Eagles' first year uniform. I was very proud of it. In 1933, the Eagles were the city of Philadelphia's colors, which was a sky blue and yellow, not gold. It was a sky blue and yellow. Yep. And it was a Swedish flag because the Swedes founded Philadelphia.
I'll see that part I didn't know.
And I made it. They wore it. I didn't make the jerseys that the Eagles wore in that game, but I did go to the Eagles and help them with all the specifications of
in 2007.
Everything. Excuse me. Yes, in 2007.
Yeah, in 2007.
And they beat the Detroit Lions like 52-7 or something. But the fans in the community who were so in love with the Kelly green, they hated the jersey. So I did do a few runs of it, and there's some out there in the collector's market now. But it was a very poor seller. I was a little surprised. I think the people just couldn't relate to it. They only wore that jersey 1 or 2 years, I think, and that was it.
Well, so funny story. I had the jersey. I had the Reebok authentic version, so I found on eBay, it was about a year or 2 ago, I found a blank Reebok authentic version, and it had the nameplate material. Sometimes the blank Nikes and blank Reeboks, they include a piece of the nameplate material customized. So that's what I did. I researched that game. Originally, I wanted Brian Dawkins, being that, for my collection, I prefer defensive players. I have offensive players too, but if I had a choice, I like going with the defensive guys. And as you know, he's one of the best safeties of all time, not just for the Eagles, but in the NFL. He's top 3 to 5, if not, top 3 for sure, safeties. So I wanted him, but he didn't play that game. He was injured. So I went with Donovan McNabb, and I went to a couple different sources online, and, I sent it to my guy that does the numbers, and I had the kit made, and the name, I believe, is a standard black font, thinner black font, and the number was a stylized font. And I thought that jersey looked awesome. Yeah. Really, really vibrant, and really memorable. I don't know why people had such a bad taste in their mouth about it, but it's funny because now you can't find the jersey anywhere, and when you do, it's expensive.
I have an Eagles jersey trivia question for you.
Oh, boy.
You ready? 1981.
Okay.
Mick Jagger opened his concert tour in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I supplied him with an Eagles jersey, and it was a player who used to be a quarterback for UCLA that played for Dick Vermeil, and Dick Vermeil moved him to safety, and you need to figure out the player name and number. And Jagger made it famous because he wore it. And I even outfitted Jagger with his pants and stirrups that he needed too. He was in the store.
For the same concert.
Yeah, it was
kidding.
Big launching of his concert in '80 or '81, I forget. And then I think he also got a Redskins jersey because he wore a Redskins when he performed in Washington.
So do you think I'll get back to answering the question. So do you think he was the one that kind of started like the Jersey game in the music scene before the hip hop guys?
He might have. It was early on.
Kind of like inspired it, or
yeah.
got
I
kicked
sold
it off?
a lot of stuff when I wasn't a licensee of the NFL because I knew how to make the stuff. In fact, I sold a lot of stuff illegally in the 70s and early 80s. It was really good, and there's a lot of collectors out there. But the guy's name, I mean, this is. I even told Dick Vermeil about it, and he got a good laugh. The player's name was John Shira.
I would have never guessed that.
No, number 21 for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it helped make that jersey famous.
Yeah,
I mean that would have been Ron Jaworski's jersey,
Sure.
because they were in. I was at the Super Bowl in January of '81 when they lost to the Raiders.
So speaking of Ron Jaworski, you actually have a pretty interesting story about how those jerseys got created, or designed, I should say.
Leonard Toews owned the Philadelphia Eagles,
Yeah.
and his wife, who I believe was an airline stewardess, his wife helped design and create all those crazy stripes on those jerseys.
Yeah.
3 stripes going down.
So, were you a fan of those? I mean, both now. Are you a fan of them, and were you a fan of them at the time when they came out?
I was not a fan of the jersey.
Okay.
I was a fan of the players.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I love Wilbert Montgomery and Harold Carmichael and Jaworski.
Jaworski's, yeah.
And Jaworski's a great guy. He played college ball at Youngstown State.
Okay.
And
Ohio.
Yeah, in Ohio. And I asked him one time. I said, "How did the pros discover you? And realize you were going to be such a good quarterback?" He said, "Well, I played at Youngstown State was Division II, but they played Susquehanna." Because I remember back in the 60s when I went to Susquehanna University, we played Youngstown State. This is way before Jaworski's time. But Ron said to me, I played in the Senior Bowl. And, we just had the Senior Bowl just now.
It was last week.
Yeah, last week. And he said they discovered me at the Senior Bowl. They could see what I could do, and that launched my career.
You never know.
Yeah.
Look, some guys go undrafted. Look at like Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. He was drafted extremely low. Antonio Brown was drafted extremely low. I think Lawrence Taylor didn't start playing football until he was 17 or 18 in high school. So some guys develop over time. I think the biggest development for players as they get older is the psychological factor, the physical skills there. Mm-hmm. But once they break that psychological and mental barrier, they're limitless.
There's a part of me that's rooting for San Francisco and Mr. Irrelevant to win this thing. But I'm really a Kansas City Chiefs fan because I like Andy Reid a lot. And
great coach.
Travis and Jason Kelce are just great guys.
Great guys. And then Mahomes is probably, I mean, if he keeps on his pace right now, like if he wins Sunday, I might have to put him number 3 all time as a quarterback.
Yeah.
Already. And he still has a solid 10 to 12 years left in him, minimum, which is crazy.
I have a few friends that are executives and general managers, and I'm not going to name any names
Sure.
In the NFL that think Mahomes is the best quarterback that's ever played the game.
I mean, his skill's insane. It was just like with Belichick and Brady. Like, did Belichick make Brady or did Brady make Belichick? It's kind of like the same thing with Reid and Mahomes. They're both so good. Yep. Like, did the chicken come first or the egg? You can't. It's insane. Like how they advance already. So quickly. So we've been speaking a lot about football. Most guys know you about your baseball jerseys.
I began for 10 years. It was nothing but baseball.
Nothing but baseball. But your actual favorite sport is football.
Is football, followed closely by basketball. And then baseball, and then finally hockey.
Yeah. So in terms of chronologically, for Mitchell and Ness, when did you start the next jerseys after baseball, being that baseball was the first?
Well, I got the exclusive rights to do baseball in 1988.
And that was actually an interesting story in itself.
Yes. I'll just tell you quickly.
Of course.
I was making all of these baseball jerseys using the New York Yankees logo, Brooklyn Dodgers, the Milwaukee Braves.
The satin jerseys, everything.
St. Louis Browns and Cardinals. And because I had a lot of I had a lot of contacts and networking with manufacturers who actually made the original jerseys and who did all the lettering. The Lieby Corporation in Chesterfield, Missouri, did a majority of all the lettering for pro sports, and they were my main lettering house. So they had all the specs. And,
Right.
I listened to you talk about stuff that you do. I didn't need to do all that. I just went to the Lieby company and said, you've been making
Yeah.
Cardinals jerseys since 1922.
That would have made
Can
my
you make
life
me
a
a
lot
couple
easier.
hundred?
Yeah.
And I provided the blanks, and they took it from there.
Well, work is work. Business is business. Yeah.
But anyway, Sports Illustrated found what I was doing was interesting. In their July issue of 1987, I have it over there on the dining room table, they wrote a full-page story with my wife and I. My wife's name is Fran Dietrich. She helped me run the company for the entire 30-year period. She ran the office operations and H&R and everything, accounts payable, receivable. I couldn't have done it without her. And anyway,
That's awesome.
Sports Illustrated does this story on me, and I get one of my friends is in advertising. He says, Peter, the response is going to be overwhelming. You better hire a phone bank. So I didn't know how to hire a phone bank. So I hired a phone bank out of Salt Lake City, Utah, with about 30 phone operators or more. And I got 3,000 phone calls in like 3 days. So people wanted to order jerseys.
That sounds a little serious.
So one of those phone calls was from Major League Baseball threatening to sue me.
Uh-oh.
You're using all of our marks.
Yeah,
You don't have any rights to use the Yankee NY or the Brooklyn Dodgers or the Cardinals. And I didn't really know that I was actually breaking. And I was so naive, just a small businessman. So they called me up to New York to Major League Baseball's headquarters, to the commissioner's office, and told me to bring samples of what I did. I was like, what is this? So I brought about 50 different teams, and they were blown away. And the next thing I know, they offered me exclusive rights to do something that they were developing called the Cooperstown Collection, and had never thought of doing the authentic jerseys. So I looked at my wife and I said, this was the most exciting thing that ever happened to me. I looked at my wife, I said, Fran, we're going to get rich.
And you did.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Not a lot.
And you sold a lot of jerseys.
A lot of jerseys.
And it all started with baseball, and it all started
with baseball.
With you thinking you were going to get sued.
Yeah, but they, from 1988 until 1998,
right.
In that exclusive deal, baseball was a little jealous of what I was doing. They didn't want to share it with the other leagues. I was not allowed to do the NBA, the NFL, or the NHL.
So that's part of your agreement with the MLB?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Finally, between 1997 and 1998, an MLB executive named Steve Armas, who had come, realized that this was really hurting my business and could hurt baseball's business if I didn't do well.
Yeah, of course.
So they then lifted that right. I'll be ever grateful to the guy Steve Armas for doing that. Lifted that right, and a guy named Sal LaRocca at the NBA came to me and said, Peter, you can do this for us as well. So I said, okay, Sal. And I knew Sal because he originally had worked at Paragon Sporting Goods in New York City, and had been buying my jerseys. So I went, and in 1998, I loved the NBA too.
Sure.
And I started making NBA jerseys. So by 2000, the NFL, who had some people doing vintage throwback jerseys, they were not getting, the quality of what they wanted or the authenticity of what they wanted. So they asked me to do it. And I loved the NFL. I jumped at that. So in 2000, I got rights to the NFL. And in 2001, the NHL gave me rights. And then I had all four major powers by the beginning of 2001.
United States sports. But for that first 10 years or so, you were basically the MLB's golden goose.
Yes.
They didn't want nobody touching you.
They didn't want anybody
touching you. You're their golden goose.
Yeah.
So from those four sports, which ones were the most difficult to replicate? Either in terms of sourcing materials or templates?
Baseball by far was the most difficult to
really?
replicate. Oh, yeah. I mean, a football jersey is...
You were around it.
Yeah, I was around it. They're relatively easy to do compared to baseball.
Right.
Basketball jerseys, been around forever, and the basketball jerseys that I did were not super old. I mean, I went back a little bit into the 40s. You know, the NBA was really didn't begin until
60s, 70s.
Well, it was called the BAA and the NL, National League. I forget what the two are. They merged, and the NBA term, 1949-50 is when the term NBA actually was coined.
And at that time, they were combating with the ABA.
No, the ABA didn't come into existence yet.
Until roughly about the 60s?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was called the BAA. Like the Warriors were part of the BAA. So baseball, because it goes back so far. I mean, I've been doing jerseys from
late 1800s.
I didn't do any. I did one or two special jerseys, like the 1869 Cincinnati Redlegs, where they were undefeated. Yeah. And I did maybe one or two of them for a few museums. But most of my baseball jerseys started at 1901 and go forward. Now, for many years, I was only allowed to do 1901 to 1969 in baseball.
And those were all wool. Then in
wool flannels.
In 72, they switched over to polynet.
Well,
some teams.
70 was the first polynet. The Cincinnati Reds opened Three River Stadium and came out in polynet jerseys.
In a polynet, okay.
That I think were made in Japan, actually.
And then by 73, roughly, the rest of the league.
Everybody had. The Boston Red Sox in 1972 were the very last team to wear wool flannels. And then wool flannel became immediately obsolete.
So, from a personal standpoint, are you more of a fan of the wool flannels or more a fan of the polynets?
Well, I'm much more a fan of the wool flannels. But my wife, Fran, at the time said to me, she said, "Peter, you're just making jerseys for old farts like yourself, childhood memories. Can't you make some memories for younger people?"
Sure.
And she said, make some double knits, make things that younger people will bring back some of their childhood memories. And I said, they'll never sell. So, I made a couple. I think I made an Atlanta Braves for Dale Murphy, and I made
the powder blue.
Yeah, and I made a Houston Astros rainbow jersey. Nolan
Ryan.
Sunrise. Who's going to buy them? Well, there was a little store in Atlanta, Georgia called Distant Replay that opened in 1998. They put them in their store. And the next thing I know, Big Boy and Andre from Outkast are wearing them in their rap videos. Yeah. And then things started to explode.
So at that time...
So my answer to your question is the double knit jerseys is what made me and put me on the map in the entertainment business.
Not the wool. It was actually the ones that you thought were going to be the least successful,
yes,
making the most successful.
Were the most successful.
You had to have some kind of crazy story about making a huge size jersey or some special one-off from some of these guys, because the style back then was completely different than it is the way they were now and even before that.
Well, I always tell the story about Fat Joe coming in, and Allen Iverson and Fat Joe were friends. And I didn't want to sell Fat Joe anything because he was too fat. So Iverson asked me to. So I think it was a Phillies jersey I made, a Schmidt or something. Yeah. And Fat Joe comes in with Macho and the rest of the entourage, and he was big. Yeah. And I made the jersey for him, and he came back 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later, and it was too tight because he got fatter. So
Fatter Joe.
So one time in an interview on MTV, I called him Too Fat Joe. He got mad at me, and he attacked me at a Sixer game. Yeah. He says, "Yo, Pete, why are you dissing me on MTV?"
Yes, City went too far.
Yeah, but now he's the picture of trimness.
Yeah. He
looks
great. He lost a lot of weight. Yeah, that's true. So, how hard was it to finally switch over to the NHL to making those jerseys? Because they used Doreen, for some of the earlier 70s jerseys.
Well, I with the NHL jerseys,
the fight straps.
Yeah, the NHL jerseys, I didn't do too many, if any, actually in Doreen. I used polyester or nylon that they started to wear, pretty quickly into the 70s.
Right.
But I did the fight strap very authentically. I did everything perfectly. Yeah. But I must admit, I had some employees, a young man, he's not super young anymore, named John Rabick, and a few other people who knew more about hockey than I did, and more about some of the hockey uniforms. And
Yeah.
so I needed more help from outside sources to make the hockey, but I was very proud of the hockey that I made.
Yeah, and the hockey jersey community, they take their jerseys seriously.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're really critical about it. I know I had one of the 1974, 1975 Atlanta Flames.
Who was the first black hockey player, ice hockey player?
He just got I'm drawing a blank. You know, it's a long drive, but he just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. What was it 2 or 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Willie O'Ree.
Willie O'Ree
From the Bruins.
Bruins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I made a Willie O'Ree.
the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was the hockey didn't come to Philadelphia until 1968.
Sure.
So I didn't grow up.
And
I
that
didn't,
was roughly when the Penguins came into it, right?
I'm not sure what year the Penguins came
I know in
in.
the '60s the Penguins, the Flyers, Blues. I think they came all roughly around the same time.
You might be right. You could work for me. We'll put you head of the hockey department.
Hey, yeah. I could get a cat in my office too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe find me a British short who would call it a deal. Yeah.
The hockey players, I will tell you, I've dealt with players from all the leagues, and I thought the hockey players were the nicest group of young men
Sure.
that I dealt with. I don't know why, but it was always a pleasure. And in my career, I've signed probably close to maybe 800 or 900 players. People don't realize that when I make a jersey, a player's jersey, I pay the player a royalty,
Of
as
course.
well as paying the
league.
leagues,
Right.
as paying the leagues. Can I tell you one funny player royalty
You
story?
can tell me as many as you like.
So it's a Super Bowl of either 2000, it was 2005 or 2006, and we're at this exclusive Super Bowl party, and Boomer Esiason, Phil Simms, and
wow.
Howie Long are there.
90s and 80s stars right there.
And so,
Yeah.
and I made all their jerseys, and and I sell a lot of jerseys. And as I told you, my wife ran the operation. So we're at this Super Bowl party, and I'd never met these three guys, and they were all standing together at this party. So I go over to introduce myself, and I say, "Hey guys, I'm Peter Capolino. I own Mitchell and Ness. I make all your jerseys." And one of the three, and I to be honest, I can't remember which one. I think it was Howie. Said, "Well, we don't want to meet you."
Oh.
I was like, "What?" And then one of them pulls out a royalty check and says, "Who's this Fran Dietrich that signs our checks?" And that's
We
my
wanna meet
wife.
her. Yeah.
So I call Fran over, and you'd be surprised how tall all three of them are.
Oh, yeah.
They're all
Football players are
relatively
monsters,
tall
yeah.
guys, 6'3", 6'4", and above.
Sure.
So Fran stands there, and the three of them are like giving her little hugs, and she's beet red.
Yeah.
She's totally mortified.
Yeah. She's the one signing the checks.
She signs the checks. That's who we
Yeah.
want to meet.
Yeah. Excellent. So, now outside of jerseys, one of your biggest passions, if not your biggest passion, is the sweaters.
Very much.
How did you get into the sweaters? What made you intrigued about them since
Well,
the beginning?
Whitey Witt was Babe Ruth's spring training roommate when he came to the Yankees. Babe Ruth had a clause in his contract that he didn't have to have a roommate when traveling for
no
road
kidding.
games. He was the only one. And Whitey Witt was his spring training roommate. And Whitey Witt's sweater from 26, 27, I forget what year, got into the collector's market, and a collector friend of mine brought it to me, and I took a look at it, and I thought, this is fabulous, you know. Nobody's making historic sweaters, and people don't realize that what we think of as warm-up jackets or pitcher's jackets or shooting, you know, secondary, you know, in those days it was a sweater that they wore. So I had that as a template, but I didn't have a maker. And my closest friend, Jerry Cohen of Ebbetsfield Flannel, who's a great researcher, helped me research a lot of things. He somehow found a knitter in Maine named Norma Reichert. Norma is now in her 80s. And Jerry said, I think Norma could make this sweater. So I engaged Norma. My wife is a knitter. We sent Norma the specs from the original sweater and started making it. And over here I have a remake of that sweater from 1925 that Babe Ruth wore. And the sweaters are so unique and so rare.
And they look great with a shirt and tie,
They look great with a shirt and tie. I even made one for Andre 3000. And it was in colors that he liked. It wasn't an authentic, but it was an authentic design.
Just with custom colors.
Yes.
What were the colors, if I may ask?
Orange and gold.
Oh wow!
You know? I forget what it was for. Andy Hyman of Distant Replay would be able to tell me.
Sure.
Distant Replay is no longer in business,
yes,
and Andy now works for Ebbets Field Flannel.
Oh wow!
Which is also owned by Fanatics.
Now it is.
Yes.
Was it last year or the year before?
The year before,
I think. Yeah. It was semi-recent. Yeah.
Yes. So the Fanatics is an umbrella organization over all the nostalgia right now.
Sure. So
I just love the look of the sweaters. They weigh 3.5 pounds. They're made from wool in Maine,
especially
by Norma. She's an
East Coast. You need that warmth.
Yes, and she's an expert knitter. These sweaters are very, very rare, dear things.
Now, at the time, did every team have a sweater, or did the Yankees started and then more teams started catching on?
No, every team had sweaters.
From the start?
Yeah, from 1901 to 1930. By 1930, sweaters left the landscape. There was no more sweaters.
Now, how much more or less difficult was it to create a sweater versus creating a jersey?
The sweater is difficult in the knitting process of making the stripes and the contrasts that go on it.
Okay.
The logos on the sweaters are relatively simple compared to the logos on the jerseys.
Plus, there's no numbers.
Yeah, and there's no numbers on them. I do ID them with tags, what year, and
cool.
and if they were National League champions or world champions. And Norma, bless her heart, Norma's in her 80s now.
Sure.
So she could actually just visually see the sweaters, because the collars changed on some sweaters from one team to the next. They weren't all identical, same kind of collars.
Buttons too look like
buttons changed. Yeah.
How hard was it to track down buttons?
Very hard. In fact, for years we just used what's called leather buttons, which I still use. Every once in a while, somebody will want a pearl button.
Okay.
But the pearl buttons are so expensive, the sweaters get up into 6 figures.
Yeah. There's a couple of White Sox sweaters I want really bad.
Mm-hmm.
That somewhere down the line, I'm going to get 1 or 2 of them. The Navy one is just on point.
I made one for Jerry Reinsdorf, 1919 White Sox sweater.
Owner of the Sox and Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am the season ticket holder with him.
I also made a 1918 Babe Ruth Red Sox sweater.
Oh wow.
And President George H.W. Bush, not W, but H.W., the father.
Yeah.
I made one for him. And I also made one for a young man that worked for me growing up named Chaim Bloom, who was the vice president of baseball operations for the Red Sox.
Oh, wow.
And now he's with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's a consultant to the St. Louis Cardinals. Chaim was a great guy, great young man.
And I can tell you from a collector's standpoint, I know some people personally within the industry and the hobby that absolutely love these sweaters, and they're like pride of joy. Mm. They have a couple hundred jerseys, but that one sweater means more to them than all the jerseys they have.
Can I tell my favorite story about my favorite jersey?
Yeah.
In 1921, Branch Rickey, and people know Branch Rickey historically as a guy who brought Jackie Robinson and broke the color line in 1947.
Sure.
But in 1921, he was vice president of the St. Louis Cardinals. And he went to, and the Cardinals had their spring training down in Ferguson, Missouri. Okay. And Rickey was invited to a Lutheran women's luncheon to be the guest of honor. And a woman named Mrs. Ellie Mae Schmidt think, well, how will I decorate the place settings? And she looked out the window in February, and there was 2 cardinal birds sitting on a branch. And she thought to herself, this is a true story, it's documented in the Sporting News. She thought to herself, I'm going to make cutout cardinal birds on a branch and put them as a place setting at each table for Branch Rickey.
Wow.
He saw them the light bulb went off, and in 1922, he had the Levy Company in Chesterfield, Missouri, make the Cardinals uniform with the bat and the two birds.
Chain stitched.
Yeah, and that's how
And that's the logo came into existence for the Cardinals.
Yes.
And the Baltimore Orioles actually had a concept of doing the same thing, but it never came into fruition.
Didn't come in.
I think one of their minor league teams that did, though, because I know Ebbets has the...
Ebbets did one.
Yeah.
Jerry Cohen at Ebbets did it.
I wish the Orioles actually did that, because that Orioles one for me almost looks better than the Cardinals, as cool as the Cardinals looks. That orange and black just is like absolutely beautiful contrast. So we've been talking about a lot of fun stuff and a lot of memorable things. You have one very interesting story about your biggest jersey like mishap that you have, and it goes back to a wool jersey.
I don't want to talk about it.
All right.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
We did a turn back the clock game. Yeah. The Mets were playing somebody, a night game. Bill Henderson, who you're going to interview.
Sure, yeah.
He documented all the turn back the clock game uniforms that I've made over the years for teams. But we did one, and the Mets, I was making the 1969 Mets in wool flannel. Well, the run of wool flannel that I used to make that uniform, and it was pants and jerseys.
So was the pinstripe the year they won the championship?
Yes.
Okay.
And I made it, and I didn't realize that the wool was somewhat defective. And I'm watching the game at a local bar, and I'm seeing the players like sliding to second base, and the pants split. I see a player at home plate batting, and the back of the jersey is sort of split and hanging. Yeah. They got through the game, but it looked like a train wreck of uniforms. And I thought to myself, this is it. I'm done. Yeah. Major League Baseball is going to call. I'm going to lose all my rights. Yeah. Nobody called, and I never heard a word.
Just went completely, basically under the radar.
Under the radar, you know. Oh my
split
God!
Split pants, split back.
Oh, I thought my life is over as a person
as a designer.
in uniforms. Yeah. That was the worst nightmare in my life.
We all have those stories, and thanks for sharing that.
I haven't told that story to anyone, and I know Bill will record. Bill Henderson has a record of all of the uniforms that we did.
No, I'm just thinking in my head, like, if I was in your shoes, then I'm literally sitting in a chair, watching it happen. I can't do anything, and like just hope that another one doesn't split. Oh man, oh, you gotta love it, Yeah, it's always the memories. So, Peter, you mentioned you had one of these sweaters over here.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to do, I think we got a lot of great content. You had a lot of great stories. You definitely finished off with a bang with the last one. So for the second part of the podcast, we're going to do, and for the second part of the YouTube, we're going to go head over to some of your show and tell. Now, you have some jerseys, you have some jackets. You do have that New York Yankees
sweater.
And you do have some other pieces of memorabilia over there, which I'm dying to see. Before we finish, with all your experience that you have, with everything that you've done for the community, for yourself, for sports, obviously, in their own right too. You help the sports grow with jerseys. For the hobbyists, for the collectors, for everybody out there that's even trying to pursue a dream outside of the jersey community, what do you have that you could give us about pursuing your dreams, not giving up? Maybe some kind of advice you could give on succeeding.
Well, it's pretty simple advice. For me, I did something that I loved, and I really didn't care where I was going with it. Okay. As long as I was making enough money to just put gas in my car,
get the bills paid,
keep my little business going. But I really loved the art of making things and of making jerseys, and I spec'd high school and college jerseys for years and years with my father, and all the high schools and colleges, and I always found it interesting that what you put down on paper is then transformed into a garment, and I found that rewarding to do, and I liked it. And then when I saw that I could transfer that skill into making major league things, it then brought me a certain amount of revenue and income to do. But I was never doing it with the thought that I was going to get rich. I was doing it because it was fun to do. I liked the creative result of what I put on paper, and what I spec'd and research that I did. Researching is more fun to me sometimes than following the teams.
I have. I mean, you've seen all those jerseys. I have.
Yeah, so I love that aspect of it. And my advice is, if you follow something you love, and it appears that it's moving in the right direction, keep doing it.
All right.
But I don't want to give people advice and say follow something you love no matter what.
Yeah, that's risky business.
And you end up, not achieving anything.
Yeah.
So you have to have little incremental successes that motivate you to continue doing what you love.
Yeah.
And if you have them, you don't think you have to go fast. You will be rewarded, and you will find it rewarding if you do a pursuit or a profession that you really love, no matter what it is.
No matter what, and it's like they say, it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yeah,
that makes a difference.
And it was very small increments. When the baseball strike occurred in 1994. I thought that I was going to go out of business totally, and I would have to look for something else to do.
I remember that because I actually thought the White Sox had a chance of winning the World Series that year with the team they had. I remember that baseball year specifically.
Yeah.
Excellent, Peter. All right, so Peter, thank you so much for this first part of our podcast and YouTube video we got. So for everybody that's both listening and or watching, that's going to conclude the episode for part 1. We're going to right away pick up with part 2, and we're going to do some show and tell, which I'm really looking forward to.
Okay, sure.
Cool. Let's get to it.
All right.
Cool. All right, go.
Bathroom break? Yeah. Off you go.